I'm John Batchelor. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, the host of Opinion Journal at WSJ.com, is here with me. A very great actor, a very successful actor, Jersey guy, New York actor, is gone from us. James Gandolfini, we learned within these last 24 hours, dead of a presumed heart attack, but 51 years old, very young to be going in any way except for to bigger and more successful movies and reprises of what now becomes his definition, which is Tony Soprano of The Sopranos. I would immediately say that I've learned tonight, after questioning Mary, that she's memorized The Sopranos. She has the whole story in her head at any one moment. Mary, is that correct? That you know absolutely everything aspect?
Yeah, I love The Sopranos. I'm a huge fan.
And Mary's a fan, and we welcome Ed Hayes, consigliere. Although Ed is an Irish attorney, he knows the legend of the Italian mob called the Mafia, sometimes called Goodfellas or Wise Guys, and the Sopranos were a Hollywood version of this. Very successful. James Gandolfini, because he's Italian, he had a way of representing what looks a whole lot like what I always read was the mob. But Eddie, you know the mob. You knew the mob. You worked with them. You've worked with their attorneys. You've been in court as the prosecutor and the defendant. James Gandolfini is a genius. Does that mob exist today? Are the wise guys out there here in 2013, Ed? Good evening to you.
You know, by the way, Goodfellas, which is one of the great mob movies of all time, I have a role in that.
Yes, I know.
Yes,
I know.
Yes,
I will extend. Not only knows the mob, he's played
it
mob movies
on the silver screen.
They're not what they were. There are still some of them. They don't even really control labor unions anymore. They have an influence in porn. They have an influence in internet gambling, but they're not what they were, mostly because they don't have the kind of corruption that they have, and also the Italians are very aggressive in locking them up, and they just don't have any place to go, and they don't have the ability to have these international Sicilian-American connections. There's still a lot of organized crime in the world, most of it politicians, but you have Russian organized crime, which is not as organized as the Italians. You have Mexican and Colombian organized crime, which is very well organized and very profitable. And you have that's what you have. I mean, you're always going to have organized crime because there's things that people want that they can't get in a legal way, and one of the best examples is narcotics.
Eddie, one of the reasons I think why people were so fascinated with Tony Soprano wasn't that just he was a vulnerable mobster. He was emotionally torn about what he was doing from time to time, but that he embodied that code that you read so much about with the Italian mob. You know, his daughter comes back from Colombia, for example, and she's not working hard, and he kicks her out, right? He's all about hard work and this kind of code that the bad guys deserve what they get, and then you protect the quote-unquote good guys who are on your side. Is that how they still operate?
No.
Is that code still there?
I'm not sure they ever operated like that, but they certainly don't operate that way anymore. One of the things is because they do so much time now. Remember, they don't do 3 years, they don't do 4 years, they do life. You do 20 years. So everybody cooperates, and as a result, even the high-up bosses in the mob cooperate. Some of them don't, but generally that changes the whole mentality once they think that the guy that they're hanging around with every day is going to cooperate against them at some point. So it's just not what it was, Mary. I wouldn't suggest that you marry one and take up this life of crime.
I'll take that under advisement.
Ed, you were here in the 1970s when it was the wild, wild New York. You were a prosecutor, and the mob is still functioning very highly. I remember reading a Daily News headline one morning when I didn't understand that a mob boss had shot to death at dinner in the village at a very famous mob hangout. I think he was eating Italian food, which seemed like a film set. They were making a movie. Was that mob dying at the time, Eddie? Were those the last days?
Remember, I represented one of the two detectives that were known as the Mafia cops.
Yes.
And they were basically charged with, I think, 12 murders from the 80s. So if they locked them up for 12, let's say they did 25. So they at the time, they had a much more of an organization, and they were much stronger. And they were much more able to use violence to further their aims. and they really don't have much of a chance to do that anymore. But at the the government has done a wonderful job about breaking their ability to function, breaking their influence over the unions, and the government deserves a lot of credit for that. I mean, by and large, these people are despicable. I mean, there used to be something called the Westies, which was an Irish gang. They were all junkies. Right? I mean, there's very little about the gangster life after about 1965, 1970 that was attractive. And by the time you got into the 1970s, it was going downhill fast.
So, Eddie, these aren't tough guys with, big rippling muscles and things like that anymore.
Come on, Eddie. Umberto's Clam House, Joey Gallo. That was a tough guy, Eddie. Don't ruin it for me. Was that a tough guy?
Well, the clams were pretty hard,
yeah,
but
fine.
He wasn't himself that tough. Some of them guys, there was a time, listen, some of them are very tough. I represented a guy who was basically a mafia killer, and he was a tough guy. He was a genuine, bona fide tough guy. And, of course, he eventually cooperated with the government, but which I told him to do. I said, look, buddy, you can't do life. Nobody can do life. I said, you got a kid. You got to cooperate. And he did. But very few of them are really tough guys. I mean, you see some of these squatty, overweight guys, and they'll just beat you to death with a bat, and they'll fight you.
Eddie, where are these guys? Are they in New Jersey, like Tony Soprano?
No, there's some in the Bronx. There's some in Staten. Staten Island is now a lot of them live in the suburbs in Staten Island. New Jersey has got some. I don't know what strongholds they have anymore.
Staten Island next to the cops, Eddie?
No, Staten Island, they live in the same block.
Same block. They all got hurt by storms named Sandy. Eddie, because is he ruining it for you, Mary?
Yeah, totally.
Eddie, there must be you met some.
Some of them are very good looking, Mary.
Yeah, but you met some mobsters who were sensitive, who could have a psychiatrist. Did you meet such
yeah.
a... Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I met a lot of conflicted
yeah, right, exactly.
Oh, now
I'm
it's
not
over.
kidding. I mean, you get a guy, he spent his whole life in crime. He's got a very, very nice child, attractive. The child's going to be a lawyer. And he comes into the office and he starts crying. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my children? I've embarrassed my children. Oh, some of them, they're human. I mean, they have, a lot of them have human feelings. They may be sociopaths. Do you want to hear a good gangster story?
No, we have no time, Larry. Eddie,
it's not even obscene.
Yeah, I have to get over the fact that Joey Gallo wasn't a tough guy. Ed Hayes, a consigliere, he lived a clean life, and he's still with us, and many of the mobsters are not. Gandolfini, a wonderful actor, bravo. Thank him for that. A sensitive gangster who may not have ever existed. Mary Kissel of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and a host of her own show each day at WSJ.com. I'm John Batchelor.